How about now? Check. Dharma, Dharma, Dharma. All right. All right, welcome. Welcome back to some of you. Welcome for the first time to a couple of you. Hey, one quick little admin thing, because we're meeting again this Sunday for the half day, and we had put down, I think, 10 to 3 with a break. Could we do it 10 to 2 instead we could do it with no break or a short break, I mean, however people feel. But can we do that? Is that cool? Do we need to, do anything? Well, or we could do just no break. I mean, like a little break, but not like a lunch break, like where you just get lunch at 2 after we're done.
We can half hour, but it's going to be a little bit more condensed with no break.
Yeah? Or a half hour, yeah. We could do that, or a half hour break. All right, cool. Why don't we just sit and take it from there? So, find a nice comfortable posture. And I'm just going to use my regular voice. This is for the stream, because there's no sound system, right? That's fine. So, find a comfortable posture. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. And just start by bringing your awareness to your body. And see if you can come to the experience really fresh. See if you can just let go of the ideas and the stories and the concepts and really, imagine you just dropped in from another dimension and you know nothing about being a person, you know nothing about your life, you know nothing about your history, and all you know is just what you can directly experience. So no deducing or, no conceptualizing. At least to the best that you can do. And instead just let yourself just sense directly whatever you feel, whatever you can sense. And let yourself just be interested in that. Where you're really on the edge of experience, none of us know what we're about to feel. Literally this next second has never happened before. I mean, it is we're all on the absolute cutting edge of existence, right here, right now. And as a way of stabilizing, we can use the breath as a kind of anchor. And you don't have to do that, but sometimes just what we call choiceless awareness. It can just sometimes be too broad. And using the breath sometimes as a kind of, as something that's very much happening in the body, in the moment, as a way of anchoring ourselves to the present. It can be a very helpful tool, so feel free to use that. If you notice that you're been caught up in thoughts, plans, ideas, just notice that. is actually a very good time to really check out the difference, where you can get really a good sense of like, oh right, that's thoughts. That's mental activity. And really get to know how different present moment awareness feels. You don't have to judge yourself. You don't have to judge the thinking. But just noticing, really we want to get very clear on the difference, like really how different the flavor, the feel of it. It's like, okay, that's stories, that's concepts, that's mental activity. And there's this other layer, or this other dimension, if you will, that's just felt, present moment, felt sense awareness. You know, sound is a particularly helpful and interesting thing to work with. Because sound will assign a meaning, like, that, I hope she's all right, but like, oh, well, that's somebody coughing. Or that, oh. But notice that's all added meaning. And I'm not saying it's incorrect, but on another level, there's just that sound. And we say, oh, well, that sound equals coughing, which then in turn equals something else and something else and something else. But just I invite you to do this as various sounds from outside arise or inside. Same exact thing. There's just this present moment sound. No meaning, no concept, just experience. So you may come to see that in this otherwise empty space, this silent space, there's something like a fountain of thoughts. I'm going to use the word fountain kind of figuratively, but just this thing where these waves of thoughts and stories just arise or almost erupt. But all around these thoughts is space. The thoughts arise in silence. I invite you to notice that your awareness, your consciousness is actually significantly bigger and wider than the thoughts. And that these ideas, stories, plans, and all this mental activity is arising in that space. And so that when you really are present, you see that there's much more happening than just these thoughts. But these other things are more subtle. The thoughts tend to be by far the loudest when we don't know how to focus on the space in between and around the thoughts. Again, keep paying attention and seeing that, okay, these are the thoughts, and this over here is not the thoughts. Really get familiar with this distinction. Let go of even such basic ideas as body. You know, we'll often say, well, sense your body. But even body is an idea. Chair is an idea. And again, letting yourself sense a direct kind of not knowing, where you don't know what it is, you just sense it. You don't need to label it or know like conceptually what it is, because it's just a direct experience in your awareness. Yeah, that last thing I said, as it left my mouth, it felt so wrong. When I said it's like a direct experience in your awareness. I didn't want to disturb you and try to correct it. But when I said the word your, just felt so false. You know, we're so used to talking like that. But I don't know about you, but in my experience, or as I sit here subjectively, that word, your awareness, seems so... like I'm honestly not aware of anything that would make it my awareness. And there is awareness, and there's stuff arising. But this kind of possessive language, we're like, well, that's my awareness. as though I've ever had the experience of your awareness. I mean, it's the only awareness I've ever known. I mean, do you feel that? Because we want to get away from what we're trying to explore tonight. In order to explore it effectively, we're looking for something that's in this non-conceptual realm. And to be clear, I'm not actually putting down the conceptual realm. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. But we're going on an exploration of just a different dimension of being, or a different, what are words people use? Different frequency, just a different something other than the common sort of normal way of being. And to do that, we want to go beyond our usual labels and concepts, our usual ideas. The class was called The Illusion of Separation. And the way we experience separation is very much conceptually. It's what we're sort of taught, it's how we identify. And even words like that, like we'll say, my awareness. Whereas again, in our direct, so we want to keep consulting our direct experience, maybe this direct experience. And that possessive kind of demarcation it's sort of nonsensical in a way, right? It's because it's like, hey, I just want to be clear that that's my awareness. Like you keep your awareness over there and this is my awareness, and let's not get things confused. So we have to be kind of like, sorry, you're locked in. You can't leave. Once you're in, that's it.
Squeeze the bar. Hotel California.
That's right.
Squeeze the bar.
The door was open all along. You were never really trapped. I forgot who said it. I think it was an Indian teacher, but he said, the bad news is there's no key to the universe. The good news is it was never locked. So what we're really talking about is relating to our experience in a different way. What the Buddha is suggesting is just like, hey, there's this experience happening of life, of your life, of this life. And we're understanding it, we're taught to understand it a certain way, to relate to it a certain way, to think about it a certain way, and that way is incorrect. Or at least, a better way to put it is not that it's incorrect, is that it's not the whole story. That's actually a much better way to put it. It's just that that way is just a very small piece of it. And that there's just much, much more to it than that. And that our understanding is phenomenally limited. And one of the reasons I like that is that, that, because I can relate to that with lots of things in life. Like when you do something or you study something and your understanding of whatever it is grows. And then you look back on it from when you were first starting, and you can see, like, oh wow, my understanding used to be very limited. Like I thought that, whatever the activity is, or whatever the skill, or, whatever it is. But can you relate to that? We've all, I assume, at this point in our life, had the experience of where you go from some very limited understanding that seemed right, and then you get a deeper understanding over time, and you say, oh wow, it was very limited. I kind of didn't know what I was talking about. So we can kind of extrapolate, since you've had that experience, that could be, according to the Buddha, it's like, hey, you're going to be really blown away, because our whole understanding of what it is to be a person is very limited in the same way. And it's limited precisely in what I hope you caught a little bit of, is that there's sort of this fountain or source or whatever of just these thoughts. These ideas, thoughts, concepts, and it's just kind of churning. Did you notice? It's just kind of going. And the way we experience life is sort of, we're glued to that. And we're kind of hanging on every thought. And we've identified with it. We actually go, yeah, that's me. What this thing keeps saying, that's what I believe. And I am the thing it's telling me I am. And that's what I'm all about. And so what the Buddha is saying is, it's not this whole anti-thought. I think in spiritual practice, you can really get this wrong idea that it's this kind of anti-thinking, that no, thinking is bad and you shouldn't think. That, by the way, is just a bunch of thoughts itself, right? The idea that you shouldn't think, that's just another thought. So it's there. It's there it is. There's these thoughts. But as you can see, it's but there's actually a lot more than that. It's just like if I was glued to there's this round carpet, there's people on camera can't see, round rug right here in the middle of the room. And if we just all sat here enamored with it, and it was that's it, that's my whole world, is just this round rug. And you just wouldn't know. It's well, yeah, no one's denying that there's a round rug here, but hey, if you looked around, there's a whole world out here. There's people, there's all kinds of cool stuff. And hey, guess what? It goes out beyond this room. And there's a whole city out there, and then it keeps going, and then it turns out it keeps going beyond that. And it goes out into space, and it's actually, they tell us it's infinite. It just goes on forever. And here it is, I just thought I was this little round rug over here. Did anyone catch that at all? In your meditative experience? Did you see, can anyone say anything about that? Making that distinction between the thought fountain, so to speak, or the story, and beyond that? Rita?
I feel like sometimes I got there, I feel the space and I notice the thoughts, and then I come back. But then the space sometimes felt lonely and too big.
Uh-huh.
And then I thought, well, is that because I'm thinking that of it? And then I got all caught on thoughts again.
Right.
So I could kind of feel it, but... And
Yeah.
I felt space before that felt good.
Right.
Sometimes, so.
Now you bring up a very good point, and I'm really glad you're bringing that up, because there's thought, but there's also our emotions, right? There's also the emotional realm and these feelings we have. And so one of the things that makes it very difficult, that when you feel that emptiness, it can evoke feeling, and it can be scary, it could be lonely, it could be disorienting and confusing. And so it's really actually important to honor that. And I would say that, the way to be with that is just actually allow that and not try to get over that. So then So, it's like, okay, then loneliness is like this. And this is where our histories end up playing an inevitable role. And this is why, I often think of people talk about, spiritual work. I often like using the word psycho-spiritual, because there's a way that you can't really go around your psychology. There's a way that you, the meditator, you start with that. There's no way to just as much as we'd like to, there's no way to just transcend that. So when we come to practice, we come as the person we are, as the small identified set of, thoughts and identities that we've kind of collected and gotten glued to over the course of our lives. And it can be a really big pitfall for many of us. I know it was for me for many years, because I know for me I was very motivated to transcend that. It was like, it was like that whole thing you hear, like Buddhism. Well, I heard the Buddha says there's no self, which is great because I never liked myself anyway. So, sign me up. I can't wait to move past myself. But the problem with that is that becomes just another idea, right? Because all you ever do in this practice is just come back to right now. I mean, there really is ultimately no other fundamental instruction. So with that, you feel the loneliness. But you'll notice that as you feel it, it's like there's all these thoughts that arise about it, right? And what's actually very healing, and that what will heal the loneliness, is to just feel it directly. Is just sensing the loneliness as its own, as just another thing that's arising that you don't have to do anything about, that you don't have to fix. You don't even have to heal it. It's, as Ajahn Sucitto said, these things are self-healing. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's important to know that there's no other experience you're supposed to be having. That's part of what makes it so hard, is we sit and we say, this is, bless you, I need to get to a different experience. I need to transcend this. And that is very much the crux of the story. I mean, we actually, in doing this practice, we have to address the meditator. Right? Like the you that's come to this class, the you that experiences the loneliness, the you that that has ideas about what meditation is and what you're going to get out of it, and you're probably not doing it right, but maybe you are, and you're probably. It's funny. I don't know if I notice it often oscillates between oh no, I suck. I'm doing this really wrong. I'm sure I'm not getting it at all. To swinging the other way, no, I'm probably one of the best meditators ever. I'm probably almost enlightened, or really close to it. And I remember watching my mind do this, and I'd be like, wasn't there something about a middle path? But in both cases, it's just another idea. You as a meditator, me as a meditator, that's just another character. It's just another story, right? It's just another movie in which I am that character who's going to get enlightened, who's going to, transcend something and get to some magical place. And then, I don't know, they say awesome things happen. Anybody else? Kind of curious what you experienced. If any of those things I was pointing to, what did you see? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I noticed I
Mhm.
catch myself, oh, I'm off here.
Right.
Notice often my body's kind of more tense, my breathing is shallow and kind of irregular in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Then kind of coming back to that experience of, of just being in sensation. But I also, to begin with, I couldn't get rid of that voice of the meditator. So I'm like, okay, good, I'm back here. Okay, I'm still back here. This is good, right?
Right.
15 seconds.
Right, right.
Towards the end, it was less of that voice.
Right. So it's really important, again, don't try to get rid of it. Right? We're not trying to get rid of anything. Because that sets us up for a lot of conflict. It's just like with this rug, right? I'm not saying, this rug is really distracting, let's get rid of it. Because it's making me forget that there's like infinite space. So if I get rid of this rug, then I'll know and experience infinite space. Right? It's just a rug. It's here. It's part of this whole thing.
It really ties the room.
It really does. That's great. I'm so glad you said that. It really ties the room together. I just go home after that. What you want to do is you just see that, right? So each part is welcome to be there, and you just see it for what it is, right? It's just like, oh yeah, okay, there's this lamp, there's that pipe, or the vent, whatever. I'm not at odds with any of these things. So it's really more of an exploration. It's like if you go out, I don't know, on a hike, and you're like, hey, I'm just going to go for this walk and check stuff out. When you get out, you're like, well, first we got to cut down this tree. And first I got to get rid of all of this stuff. It's like, no, it all gets to be there. Now what happens is if you just let it be there and you see it, you're like, oh yeah, there's the meditator voice, right? There's that like, oh good, you're doing it right. Oh no, you're not. Oh good, yeah, this is great. If you teach this stuff, it gets really bad because then there's this teacher voice that kicks in where you start going, oh yeah, I'll definitely talk about that on Tuesday, And I used to try to get rid of that to no avail. And then I was like, don't you tell people to just let things be? And then the thing that's cool is if you just let it be, again, then you're free to see beyond it. Right? And what's ironic is that if I obsess on something like, oh, this lamp, I don't know, like, should it be there? It's like, yeah, but that actually draws more attention to it. And but when you let things be, you're like, okay, great, that's there, and that's there, and that's there, and then, hey, what else is there? And you start seeing all this other stuff around it. So that meditator voice is not ever going to go away. But what you find, though, like you notice at the end, as you kind of let it be and you're focusing on other stuff, it can just get really quiet to the point where you're like, oh yeah, it wasn't that interesting to me. So I don't know, maybe it was there, maybe, it can get very subtle. To the point where it's like, I don't know, did it go away? Did it not go? I mean, I definitely am not paying attention to it. I'm not even sure. So that's you don't want to be at odds with anything that's happening in your experience. There's never anything wrong with your experience. Because that very idea that there's something wrong is a concept, is a judgment, right? Like someone has to kind of come along and say, hey, that's wrong. I kind of like, sometimes I pretend like if I'm a baby and I haven't learned anything yet, what would it be like, right? It's like if I would say, well, no one told me that, well, this is good and that's bad. I don't know about that, so I'm just having an experience, It's even funny, our language, I'm having an experience. It's a trip like how possessive our language is, right? I mean, it's just kind of interesting that those are the verbs we use. Anyone else?
I had a question from
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah.
I guess it ties into just meditation in general.
Mm-hmm.
The paradox between karma, like the actions we take, and then allowing, kind of the practice of just allowing and witnessing and observing. But then there's actually like, I do have some sense of doing shit and then thought reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was curious, like, I was like pondering that, or that thought was coming through my awareness throughout the week of
Yeah.
things on karma. Like, I'm not saying it's bad to build a business or not build it or whatever you want to do, but if I just sit and passively sit there, that could become a hindrance as well.
It could. One of the distinctions we're making, though, is meditation practice versus, the rest of your life. And so the last week when I was given that instruction of just allowing everything to be there, I didn't mean to imply just do that forever. But, it's like more until we ring the bell. So, that's why we practice, because it's like this sort of laboratory condition where you can say, okay, well, for the next 30 minutes, like I'm definitely not starting a business in the next 30 minutes. I'm not solving any world problems in the next 30 minutes. I'm not actually in the next 30 minutes, I'm not doing anything. And then that makes it kind of safe to really go into that without getting caught up. Because you're right, it gets trickier then when you have to actually act in your life and make choices and do things. That can get tricky about, well, what's wise action. But the meditation session allows us to really touch into that, where we don't have to do anything. And in Buddhism, you have sila, samadhi, panya, which is sila is the virtues. It's like the sila is like the precepts and sort of right action. And the Buddha actually was very specific about sort of what's right and wrong as far as actions go. Like things, it's almost like commandments, but different. And that the intention, the spirit of it isn't that God is going to somehow punish you, but that, bless you, what leads to good results and bad results. It's really seen as more skillful or unskillful. And so there's a lot of rules like, not killing, not harming, not lying, not stealing. All the kind of, I always used to laugh that it all kind of comes down to like Bill and Ted saying just be excellent to each other. It's really that. It's really non-harmfulness. And then that leads to samadhi, which is meditation, and more specifically, concentration. So it's like, well, if you're living in this kind of blameless, harmless way, so you're not struggling, your conscience is clear, you're not remorseful, it becomes easier and easier to settle into the state of, let's say, kind of concentrated, pure being. From that, you experience things as they really are, at least bits of it, which leads to panya, which is wisdom. And wisdom is like a deep, genuine knowing of what's true, right? But then it's nice because it becomes this circular thing that from the panya, the wisdom, right? Because now if you have some wisdom, well, that'll inform your actions. So your sila, your actions, your virtue, your morality, so to speak, actually gets better because you get clearer and clearer on what's really going on, what's really true, what's really important, right? So wisdom then informs your actions. Your actions get more wise, which leads to increased samadhi, right? Increased concentration, deeper meditation, which leads to deeper wisdom, which then leads to, even more refined action. And it's this like beautiful kind of positive feedback loop, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really helped me just kind of basically putting boundaries between those realms or different, how would you define that?
Yeah, what are they called? God, I even taught a class on this here. Like a few years ago, we did like a 4-part thing or a 3-part thing. But I forget what they're called. Are they, whatever they're called, the 3 things. I don't know.
One of those Buddhist lists.
One of those Buddhist lists.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
So I was watching awareness and I was watching thoughts, and my awareness is all usually physical sensations, and my thoughts were, I think, about 80% of, ooh, ribcage, oh, move here, oh, expand, that feels good, expand that, and, you know, ooh, ground your right foot, move the energy there. So that's just, you know, it's kind of fun for me to just think about visualizing sensations and all. But I realize that's thinking, and the other is more just the pure awareness. So I just wanted to present that.
Yeah.
So,
And I know you a little bit from the past. I know you've dealt with chronic pain a lot. That's been like this lifelong struggle for you in a way, right? So is that kind of coming from that? You've used mindfulness a lot to manage that? And so is that part of what you're describing? Is you?
yeah,
And how's that? I mean, actually, I haven't talked to you in a couple of years. How's that going?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, migraines are getting better. Back kind of flared up, but that's a continual
Mm-hmm.
in and out. But that, yeah, so yeah.
So I understand. I mean, I get that, and I understand. So there's been so when you can kind of find things that don't hurt, or oh, hey, that feels good. Yeah, let's expand that. I really understand that sort of that direction and that practice, and I know for you it's been, like it's something that's gone on for many years. So what you can play with and just see. I mean, you can just stay with that. I mean, and there's just definitely no judgment in that, and you can do that. There is a identification as someone who's trying to, work through this pain and get some relief from all this suffering, and that's very valid. Like that pursuit's very valid. A lot of this stuff, I have a lot of. Respect for people who work with chronic pain, because I think a lot of this stuff, it's like, yeah, it's all fine and easy to say until you're dealing with real chronic pain, and then it's like, yeah, try sitting with it. Like, hey, let's just sit with it. Yeah, like try sitting with a migraine, and so you seem less caught, and it seems like it's getting more manageable. So you may want to see what is it like, because what I'm hearing is kind of, okay, well, I'm someone who's working with pain, and oh, hey, I found this little area of relief. Great, let me get more of that. Oh, cool, hey, I can expand this thing. That feels good. Let's get more of that. And that's beautiful. And see if you, but you know what I mean? It sets up a certain narrative, like, okay, well, I am someone who's trying to get away from the bad feelings and find more of the good feelings. And again, nothing wrong with that at all. But it does set up a certain self, we sometimes use this word as selfing, that reinforces this me that's going to find the good spots and get away from the bad spots. And if you've gotten to a point, like I would say, if you're anyone here is suffering from a lot of chronic pain, you kind of got to do that, because otherwise it's just too damn painful to really meditate. But if you're getting to that where you can do that, and your nervous system is getting relaxed enough, and you can get into states that aren't so painful, see if you can kind of put that quest down and just be there. Just see what's it like to just allow the experience to be what it is. But again, I just want to be sensitive that sounds really good, and it's easier said than done. And once you're, if you're having a migraine or something like that, that becomes pretty difficult. It's kind of like learning to not it's like we take our own experience very personally, right? Not only stuff that happens in the world, but even, it's like if I'm having pain, it's like, but I am the one who is having the pain, right? As opposed to like, well, no, that there's just pain here, but it's not really happening to someone, right? Just like these thoughts aren't really happening to anyone. They're just, like this rug isn't happening to anyone. It's just here. And I'm pretty sure, I'd be willing to bet if you looked at it, you probably have already, that sort of personal identification with the pain and the kind of this lifelong sort of saga with the pain, that there's a lot of identification, right? Like, well, I'm someone who gets migraines, and now I'm someone who's gotten over that, and I'm someone who's worked really hard and practiced and improved on that. Again, which is not a bad thing, but it reinforces this narrative of self.
Because I think now I'm kind of in the, oh, this feels so good.
Right.
Rather than being
Which is great, but so I would actually definitely tell you to stay in the good. I mean, definitely, like, that's wonderful. And so just stay there and just enjoy that. Just really let yourself dissolve into the goodness of that. Right? So the goodness, but it's not my goodness, it's just goodness.
nice.
Yeah? Just like when it's not, when it's pain, it's like, yeah, that's just pain. That's not my pain. Yeah? Okay, good. Anybody else? Has anybody, I know like some people are here for the first time and some people were here for the other two. I know that at the end of the first one, I gave kind of the homework of watching how your mind needs to create problems, and how because that's actually our sense of self really loves having a conflict. I mean, that's just like, that's what it's, that's just real food of self. Because my sense of self, it's like, well, I'm to a great extent defined by what I'm for and what I'm against, right? Like that's what people, like even if it's like, well, here are my likes and here are my dislikes, and that's what I am. Like when you meet somebody and say, well, I like to get to know you, people, that's what people do. They'll tell you, well, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. And so a lot of times if things get kind of too easy and you get kind of too, you're like, hey, I'm just allowing it, everything's fine. It gets actually kind of disorienting and our ego, our personality structure has to reassert itself by having a problem with something. And you notice how sometimes it can feel kind of good, like, yeah, I hate that. And it's like, but I know who I am. Definitely, I'm like really clear. So that was one of the things. That was 2 weeks ago. And then last week, what was it last week? Do you remember?
Me?
Yeah.
Not really.
I don't remember homework assignment from last
No,
week.
there was one, I can't remember.
There was like one thing I said, try to pay attention to.
I think it was to take your experience, and particularly if it's a difficult experience, and imagine it was somebody else's experience.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that was pretty good.
We did that.
Right.
When you were
Right. Yeah, I was saying try to for those of you who weren't here, I told you I used to play with this idea that I would sit and feel my feelings or whatever, and if it was difficult, I would just pretend that that wasn't my feeling, that I was this like compassionate bodhisattva that would feel the feelings of others in the world, and by feeling it for them, I like relieved them of it. And I wanted to make clear that I didn't genuinely believe this. It was just kind of a game. But I'd be like, oh, I feel sad. Like, no, this is the sadness of a little child in India, and I'm alleviating their suffering by holding it for them. And what I noticed and was playing with it that way is that it really changed how I felt about it. That instead of being like, oh, I got to get away from this. I would actually be like, oh, no, I'd be like really eager to feel suffering, you know? And that the point was that just by relating to it differently, it actually very much changed how I felt. By the way, I wonder with your chronic pain, if some of the pain you could do that with. Like literally, like next time you're feeling it, be like, no, this is like there's some like poor lonely child and you're alleviating this for them. And for every like minute you're willing to sit with this pain, they don't have to. And just notice like if it changes it at all. You know, because it will shift because our experience is like there's just the experience and then there's my reaction to the experience. Right? So pain is often thought of as actually strong sensation accompanied by aversion. Right? So what we call pain is actually that. It's strong sensation accompanied by aversion. You know, and you can see that because, you know, like certain, like, you know, people like different things, right? And some people, I mean, you know, depending on what context you're talking about, someone might like pain. And then suddenly it's a whole different thing, isn't it? Right? And suddenly it's like, well, pain, but like accompanied by what's the opposite of aversion? Clinging or greed but, you know, pleasure. Right? And then it becomes different. So again, this is just to emphasize that our experience is very subjective to what it means to us, what it represents to us.
It's like people with hot sauce.
Like people with hot sauce. Exactly. That's a really good example of it. I'm just imagining hot sauce right now. I like hot sauce personally. Anyways, so anybody do any of those things? Either one of those? Yeah.
I did. So it was really interesting that you gave us the instruction to look at conflict, how we generate it, or the self generates it, and enjoys it.
Right.
So that was really helpful. And a couple of nights after that, I just got this craving and for, you know, relatively minor but unskillful behavior. And it was like a runaway train. So I gave into it, and it was pretty good. But then the next morning, there was all this criticism of it. So in both instances, it was drama, and both instances, I'm not talking about the behavior,
Yeah.
I'm talking about
All the stuff around it.
all the drama that just intensely wanted this.
Mm-hmm.
It was dramatic. And the criticism the next day, also drama. And I thought, this is a fucking scam.
Right.
Like, both do it, don't do it. I'm getting railroaded here.
Right.
I'm getting hijacked.
Right. Yeah.
It was interesting. It was like, and I saw the enjoyment
Right.
of it.
Right.
That's the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
Not just the harshness,
Right.
but underneath it, the enjoyment of, wow, this is pretty cool.
Right.
It was really great.
Yeah. Good. That's great. Yeah, I'm glad you see that. It's really, yeah, that's what's interesting is you start to see that some of these things we claim we want to get rid of as good practitioners is like, nah, you wouldn't even know what to do with yourself.
Right.
And that kind of, as we start letting go of some of this stuff, that they're really, it's not, you know, again, like, because there's this idea that would be all so great. Why wouldn't we just all transcend all this right away? But that it's like, no, we're pretty invested in it. And it would be.
There was something not quite right with the present moment.
Right.
And I just got this idea, that'll be better.
Right.
Do that. That
Right.
always works.
Exactly. So I actually we have about 10 minutes or so, and I'd like to, unless there's any other questions, I'd like to kind of spend these last 10 minutes doing a bit of a guided meditation exactly to this point. So you don't even have to change your posture. I mean, you can, but And you don't even have to close your eyes. You can if you want. But I just want us all to be honest with ourselves and just bring your awareness to your present moment and just let's really notice and pay attention to all the ways that we are conflicted with the present moment. So just imagine that there's sort of this opportunity to kind of dissolve into this present moment, to not be separate from it in any way. And then notice all the ways that something says, and all the reasons why you have to do something about this. Whether it's something you have to kind of get out of this moment or achieve in this moment or plan something for later. Sort of why not just be at peace right now in this present moment? Notice if you allow, so sort of what happens? Can you allow a little more? And again, if not, that's fine. Then notice, what are you resisting? And notice, pay particular attention, because one of the things that can be very limiting is the idea of what that should be like. There's like a concept of like, okay, well if I just allow, oh well then it'll probably be like this. And notice how that's just an idea. And there can be this very insidious underlying sense that there's a right and a wrong way to do this. And oh shit, I better do it right. Like for some of us, that's a kind of message that we get caught in. Like, oh, there's probably a right way to do it, and I'm probably doing it wrong. And see if you can let go of that. Like, no, you can't actually do it wrong. This is it. And notice, is there actually some kind of you that's separate from the present? Like, is that true? I mean, is there something that is you that needs to get present? Inferring that there's a you that's somehow separate from the present? And it needs to somehow get present? I mean, where would this you be exactly? I mean, how is that possible? Isn't everything that's arising, including every bit of self-doubt or fear or loneliness or confusion, I mean, isn't that just arising in the present moment like everything else? So why would that be any different from anything else? Isn't that all just this infinite unfolding now? And how could there be some part that's somehow separate from that? There's just beliefs that exist that say, well, no, but that's not part, that's me, I have to somehow get present. But even that belief is just something that's arising in the present moment. Even that belief is not happening to you, but just another thing that's arising in the present, like the sounds or the sensations or the colors. Just this unfolding now. What is sometimes referred to as isness. And just for this remaining minute, see if you can offer up no resistance whatsoever to just what's happening now. So on Sunday, if you come on Sunday, we'll have 4 hours, and we'll delve into that more deeply. We'll have more time to kind of come in and out of that. What I'd like to do is spend quite a bit of time actually going into that experientially, and then like looking at the various things that might come up and offer and giving each other support for ways that gets confusing or difficult, or maybe hear from one person. Anyone was that difficult for anybody in a certain way that we could address? It's good. I had a feeling everyone felt it. All right, so we'll leave it at that. All right, good. So let's just do a little dedication of merit. May the merit generated by us coming together like this, as a Sangha, as a collective, as a community, to help each other and support each other in surrendering, feeling safe in this present perfect moment. We dedicate and share this merit with beings everywhere. May we all be free. Thank you. I hope to see you all on Sunday.
So,
Oh wait, we got announcements.
Yeah, this is my first Dharma talk, so for those. These great teachers and, all kinds of programs that you can see on our calendar. So feel free if you're feeling generous, and we don't turn anybody away either, right, for lack of funds. So if you're feeling generous, please give. We take credit cards and cash and all forms of everything. And thanks for coming. I appreciate it.